What's going on, guys? I'm Anime Okage, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 246. Let's get into it. First, before we start, I'd like to say, as a new channel, I would love to extend my reach and connect with other anime lovers out there. And I know this gets annoying and you've heard it 1,000 times, but every comment, like, and subscribe really helps me get out there and grow my channel. I'm sorry though, let's get into it. So we drop right back in where we left off. Higuruma and Kusakabe are about to get hit with Sukuna slashes, while the rest of the crew, Yuji, Choso, and Ino, jump into battle as well. Almost forgot my pointer. Now, in the background of this scene, we can first see Higuruma beating himself up because he didn't realize or take into account the limitations of Judge Man or how Judge Man would work in this situation. He's really getting mad at himself over his lack of combat experience, which we have to remember that Higuruma has only been a Jujutsu sorcerer for about 2 months now. Not gonna lie, I goofed in my first video whenever I said that I thought that Judge Man might have tried to take the curse technique, but given Sukuna's power, that Judge Man just might not have been powerful enough to take the entire thing, and perhaps he just toned down the potency of the power. That was false. Apparently, we learned that Judge Man works on the modern day law system. And if a criminal were being detained by the police with a deadly weapon in possession, what do you think they would take from him first? I'll go ahead and give you a second, let you guess. If you guessed the weapon, you were correct. And I was wrong last week, very wrong. Sukuna no longer has his Kamutoke, which in this situation is like taking brass knuckles away from John Bones Jones. It doesn't matter, you're still gonna get your ass whipped. I also touched in my last video of how the cuts on Higuruma and Kusakabe were not very deep, unlike Sukuna's usual attacks. They weren't deep at all and they didn't seem like fatal blows, even given the large number of attacks that Sukuna launched. And like I theorized before, I thought that the reason that the cuts weren't too deep was because Judge Man took away some of the potency, but you guessed it, I was wrong again. The reasons that these attacks were not fatal is because of Kusakabe himself. Kusakabe actually used the same technique that he used against Kenjaku when he used Simple Domain to dull down the Uzumaki. He pulled off the very same thing in the very last second to dull down Sukuna's slashes. Every time I don't care about Kusakabe or forget he's there, he pulls out something like this. Incredible. And for those of you who don't know what Simple Domain is, it's a newer technique that's used against domain expansion to negate the sure hit effect. The other way that Simple Domain can be used is by increasing your defense and attack potency in a very small space around you. Basically buffing all your stats and debuffing any techniques that may enter in past your barrier. As a certified geek, it makes it a little bit easier for me to understand when I put it into game terms. We also saw in the first panel how Sakuna is very quick to compliment all the other sorcerers on how much they've grown in strength and potency within their techniques, and overall curse energy output. Over my shoulder, Kusakabe is explaining how the slashes that were coming at them were indeed not the world-cutting slashes that he'd use against Gojo. Rest in peace. This also gets Kusakabe wondering why he hasn't used his fire technique that he used against Jogo in Shibuya. In the face of the Executioner's Sword, you think he'd want to take that out as quickly as possible, given it's a one-hit kill, sure kill. He goes on to think that it's really not worth thinking about in this moment given the circumstances that Sukuna is right in front of them, ready to kill. Given that we're talking about the slashes though, we're actually given a little bit more insight into how they work. Dismantle are actually smaller slashes that they do not cut until they reach the target and then they cut and separate. Where Cleave actually shoots out and grows in size and power as it moves. At least that's the way I understood it. I think that Cleave probably has a lot more power behind it that Sukuna has to expend, and or probably it has a cooldown period of some kind that leaves him a little defenseless. Given that he's being attacked on all sides, even though he's not intimidated, it's probably something that he doesn't want to pull out of his hat too quickly. When it comes to the fire arrow, I don't think Sukuna really thinks he needs to use it. These sorcerers, even though he just complimented them, he doesn't have much respect for them like he did Gojo, or even Jogo. That's where Sukuna uses more powerful techniques against them. If Sukuna respects you, then he'll attack you like he respects you. If you were playing Dark Souls or any game of that nature, when a low-level enemy approaches you, you don't use a heavy attack or a magic attack that would use up energy or stamina. You hit it with a light attack that's not going to cost you anything. It just makes sense to me. Higuruma apologizes and explains to Kusakabe that he was able to get the death penalty and confiscation, but he wasn't accounting for Judge Man only taking the cursed tool in his possession. Good guy Kusakabe actually puts Higuruma at ease, saying that it doesn't matter now, the main objective was getting the Executioner's sword. He says that's truly the only thing that they need to win. He then goes to ensure Higuruma that he will protect him at all costs, even if it means dying himself. Dude just keeps getting better. In my opinion, we gotta give it up to Kusakabe for being the MVP of this chapter so far. First, diluting Sukuna's slashes, then a line like that. But we're still early in the chapter. We're reminded by that the number one goal on the battlefield right now is to keep Higuruma safe. Because at this point, with the sword, it's their only chance of winning. We can't be sure if anyone else on the field even has the ability to injure Sukuna at this point, since no one has seen him in his true form like this. But we're gonna try. Sniping from a short distance away, we have Choso joining the fray. But just before it connects, Sakuna uses Flash Step to disappear from sight. Actually, Sakuna would probably use Sonito. As you can see in this top panel up here, Choso actually joins Ace in the Donut Club.
He got his ass cooked. He got cooked.
That's a One Piece reference, and I'm sorry for anyone who hasn't seen that part yet. I just get PTSD from it. Moving on. I actually cannot believe how much Choso gets slapped around now.
I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this.
He was brought in as a very powerful character right off the bat, and now I can't see him win anything. I mean, everyone else has gotten super powerful around him, but still, feel bad for him. Next up to bat is Ino, with Nanami's blade. What? I mean, there's nothing saying he can't use the blade, but it's a dull blade, and out of Nanami's hands, I can't imagine it having that much power. But it does. Color me and Sakuna absolutely shocked, but this thing's got some ass behind it.
Damn.
Enough of it so much to actually crush the ground beneath Sukuna's feet. Now this is an interesting turn of events. Given Ino's ability to use the power of the four auspicious beasts, once he puts on his mask, he's able to become a medium and use their techniques. Or at least we think it's the techniques of the mentioned beasts. I don't really know what it is, but it's kind of cool. But what are these beasts? Are they made up? Were they real? Are they cursed spirits? Something tells me that to use their techniques, they had to be real in some way. But you know who else was very much real? Nanami. When the panel zooms in at the point of contact between Sukuna's arm and the dull blade, we can see Nanami's trademark cursed dots on the blade. There are two possible reasons for this. If you remember, Ino interrupted a little powwow before this whole battle began, the whole thing, butting in on a conversation that Gojo was having. We suspect it has something to do with Nanami, but we didn't know for sure. This is a good sign that it was. And whenever he conversed with them, I'm thinking that he either had Nanami's blade imbued with Nanami's curse technique, or he's using his own curse technique to seance Nanami, thus using Nanami's curse technique with the blade. As we saw before with Granny summoning Toji, that she only summoned the body, not the soul, in fear of it taking over completely, which Toji used an absolute Uno reverse card on her. But what if you could summon the soul and use their techniques if you're in favor or in good graces of the party that's summoned? Either way, this is awesome. It would be absolutely incredible even to get Nanami back in this small way. But wait, even with the help of Nanami, Ino has been improving on his own, because straight after that attack, Ino gets kicked by Sukuna. Now the Ino that we've come to know and love will be done after this kick. Easily. But Ino is able to defend with the blade and only gets knocked back. I don't see any damage being inflicted on him. Ya boy's been working out. We then see Kusakabe and Yuji launching a joint attack with Higuruma in tow, swinging that sword. We can only assume that Kusakabe and Yuji are only trying to create an opening so Higuruma can strike him. But Sakuna, being the cautious yet powerful sorcerer that he is, doesn't even give a chance for the Executioner's sword to strike. And yet again, dodges entirely. Now this is just a quick thought, and I know it's going to be a hot take, but hear me out. Yuji and Ino were both able to land strikes. But had either of those attacks been the sword, Sakuna would still be dead. Now, here's the long shot. We've seen before in the Mahito fight, when Todo fought him. Yes, I'm bringing up Todo. He was able to perform Boogie Woogie, not just using his own two hands, but after his one hand had been cut off, he was able to use a secondary hand to still enact his curse technique. Imagine they're fighting Sukuna and Yuji is about to strike, which of course Sukuna will block. He thinks it's just a punch. But Todo is hidden in the battlefield, with someone like Maki or somebody else that would just accompany him. And they perform Boogie Woogie together. They use this technique, using it to swap Yuji and Higuruma at the very last moment to not give Sukuna a second chance to recoil. I know that it's fanfic, but if this somehow gets back to Gege, you're welcome. Anyways, since Higuruma misses, Sukuna grabs a hold of him and starts beating the living shit out of him, which I can't even imagine how hard Sukuna hits. With 4 arms. Sukuna throws Higuruma through a bunch of rubble and then chases after him to give a follow-up attack. Yuji tries to intercept the chase, but he realizes that Sukuna at this point is just way too fast. There's no chance of him catching up, given how fast Yuji even is. We don't know who yells this, but somebody in the back goes, "Don't leave Higuruma alone!" I mean, obviously. My money is on Kusakabe with the big brain move. Sukuna then slashes the building where Higuruma landed in 2. Jump to another flashback where the group is brainstorming about this fight.
Okay, so when we're going to go play, we just have to work harder. We have to shoot better, we have to play better, get your energy up.
Yuji states that he still has plans to save Megami. Haven't thought of him in a minute. Honestly, it's hard to think if Megami even wants to come back at this point. Gojo's dead. His sister's dead. He's lost the 10 Shadows. Zenin's clan's dead. There's no one to even control now, or be the master of. And we don't even know if Megami's body can go back to normal after this transformation. I guess we can just hope for the best. We then learn that Yuji explains that Higuruma's technique is the perfect technique for this job. Because when Judgman grants the Executioner's Sword, it's a one-hit kill, but it's only limited to the person that was summoned for. And since we learned that Judgman can differentiate between 2 souls in one body, that gives chance that he would only kill Sukuna and not Megami. Or Megumi. I'm probably butchering that the whole time. I'm gonna switch to Megumi. But there's a chance to save him.
Fucking work, dude! Hell yeah!
And remember that ominous message of, "Do you want to die, Higuruma?" We thought it might be Sukuna projecting it into him. We thought it might be Judgman. Well, I thought it was Judgman, maybe. I don't know if anyone else thought that. Now that I think about it, why would I think it'd be that? Doesn't matter, it was Yuji. In the flashback, we see that Yuji confronts Higuruma before the battle and asks him, "Do you want to die, Higuruma?" Pointing out the fact that he's facing off against Sukuna and doesn't know reverse curse technique in case Sukuna actually lands a blow on him. Higuruma explains that he's at peace with his role if he has to die for this. For only being a sorcerer for 2 months, Higuruma has grown quite the resolve for a world that he didn't even know existed before that. Big ups for Higuruma. Speaking of Higuruma impressing us, he's able to tank the next slashes from Sukuna. Speaking of impressive, Higuruma is able to tank the incoming slashes from Sukuna using domain amplification. We've only seen that used a few times in this series. It's a hard technique to pull off. And if you want to get Sukuna's attention, that's how. It would make sense why Sukuna is so intrigued by Higuruma's power, because even Kenjaku was before. And just as he's fascinated with Higuruma, he's a little bit more fascinated in that Executioner Sword. We don't know if he just wants to know about it. We don't know if he can steal it. We don't know if he can copy it. But he's interested. A little too much.
Give me that.
Higuruma then raises his sword, emitting a brilliant light as he prepares to defend against Sukuna. Sukuna then closes out the chapter, commenting and comparing Higuruma to Gojo, describing them both as gemstones brimming with talent. Wow. That is a huge compliment coming from Sukuna. Somebody who sees everybody as ants compared to him. But Higuruma and Gojo, they alright.
Good job.
This, on the other hand, is a bad sign for Higuruma. We've all seen what happens when Sukuna gets intrigued by someone and or respects them. I hope they're all ready for an excited Sukuna, because that's an entirely different fight. But what did you all think of this chapter? I thought it was great. Pacing, action, good dialogue, even the good little flashbacks. Go ahead and drop a comment of what you thought. Also, give me any suggestions for anime that you think I should cover. I have a few more planned, as you can tell by my straw hat in the back. As a brand new creator, I would love to hear from y'all and talk about the thing that we all love most. So let me hear from you, and see you next time.